Happy to be checking back in with Quincy City Council President Nina Liang for an update on the December 7th council meeting. Hey, Nina.
Hi, how are you?
Doing okay, thanks. Here we are, virtually communicating still, and it looks like it's going to be that way for a little while.
I know. I got a little bit more creative today, and I'm coming to you from the kitchen. So I'll have to think about where to come from next time.
Oh, we're going to do cooking with Nina?
We joked about this earlier, but I think a cooking with Nina would be, again, to go to some online ordering for some local restaurant and ordering from your local restaurant and then hitting send on that. And that would be cooking with Nina.
Okay. Well, everybody's cooking looks a little different, so that's.
I mean, the benefit of growing up with, family members who are amazing chefs is that I get amazing food. But the downside to that is that I have amazing family members who are great chefs, right? So I've never really had to do too much. And I can't believe I'm publicly admitting that, but yeah.
Well, look, you need both because one is no good without the other, right?
Right, exactly.
The council is still meeting virtually too, yes?
We are. I'm super grateful for my colleagues, in their partnership with this, or at least this effort is a behemoth of an effort to make sure that we are coordinating everything virtually is not an easy task, and all of us would prefer to be able to see each other in person and to see the public in person again. But obviously we want to be safe in everything that we do. So as of right now, it's still virtual, but we are assessing that, each meeting to try to see what we can do to hopefully safely one day meet in person again.
Yeah, cases are climbing right now, unfortunately, not just here in Quincy, but across the country, really.
They are. It's concerning for sure.
I know that you're starting every meeting honoring a COVID-19 hero. So who was it this time?
It was, drum roll,
yes.
Interfaith Social Services. So Ward 5 Counselor Chuck Phelan is close with the folks over at Interfaith and wanted to take this opportunity to just highlight some of the work that they have done. I mean, obviously year round, they are a huge supporter of the community, right? And supporting individual families anyways, with specifically their food pantry. And, during this time, more than ever, the need had risen so much and they completely followed through. They were able to meet that increase and go really above and beyond. And so to be able to take that moment and recognize that there is still that need in the community, right? That it had been there before COVID and only spiked during COVID, that we have that resource here because we have Interfaith here, and so I'm really happy that Councilor Phelan brought them in front of us and that Rick Doan, the executive director, was able to come to us and talk to us about some of the work that they had done this year.
That's great. We've had a long relationship here at QETV with Interfaith as well, and they do amazing work. The volunteers there are just dedicated to the mission for sure. So that's great to be able to recognize them.
What's really impressive about them too is that they are the prime example of what it means for a community to come together, right? Like if you think about everyone from, the volunteers to the staff, to the board members, right? To financial contributors and donors. I mean, all around, it is made up entirely of Quincy residents, who are volunteering their time to do this. And it's really impressive. I mean, all of the counselors, we've all had the opportunity to work one way or the other with this organization. And we can see that, again, from the volunteers to the people who are working the food pantry to the people who are donating and driving and all of it, right? They're all Quincy residents. And so Interfaith not only is such a valuable resource for this community, but it is also, I think, such a shining example of what it means to see a community come together to, actualize something that is a huge resource, So I'm such a big fan of them and the work that they do. They're phenomenal.
That's great. Down to business, I guess there were two main items that I saw. One was the appropriation from the Community Preservation Fund, and then, of course, property taxes, right?
Yes. So we started it off with a finance committee meeting at 6:30 to go over a $5 million appropriation request from community preservation funding to two properties in the city that are living in both Ward 3 and Ward 5. So Councilor Kane and Councilor Phelan had brought this forward, had a number of community meetings to talk about what this means for the ward and for the surrounding residents. And essentially it had gotten approved last night. And so it's the Beachcomber site and then Zero Harriet Ave. That's, a few streets over from the golf course if you're going sort of down West Squantum Street in that back area. And that had moved forward, that had gotten approved.
Okay, was it unanimous?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to be able to support, again, just making sure that we're retaining open space. Development is happening everywhere, and while that's all well and fine to help support the tax base, we certainly want to make sure that we are being mindful of the economic impact and the environmental impact. And so personally for me, I think it's wonderful that we were able to take these two properties and preserve them and not have that huge negative impact environmentally to the surrounding area.
Yeah, it's really one of the main goals of that fund is to preserve open space.
Exactly. Which is what we're going to see here now.
Yeah, very good. The request was 5 million, but was it fully approved at 5 million, or was it cut some?
It's fully approved for $5 million. So the $5 million covers the purchase of both of those properties. So now they're going to be public spaces that are owned by the city. And then it also covers any mitigation work. So, just cleaning up some of the area, and then also building out some more of that open space, specifically over at the Beachcomber site, because we do have to take down that building. Saying that out loud feels so sad, saying that we're taking down the old Beachcomber site. But yeah, so the full 5 million was approved.
Okay, very good. And then, of course, the other matter at hand, the property tax hearing.
Yes. Before we go to that, actually, I'm sorry,
Yep.
we just want to go in order. So the first public hearing that we had was for municipal aggregation, and we talked about this a little bit.
Yep.
I think actually a few times over the course of this year. So at the beginning of this year is when the council body had approved that this is the direction we want to move in. And Shelley Dean in the city is, oh my goodness, she's just been amazing at putting together the research and the work behind this to make sure that we have a good supplier working with National Grid to move forward. And the public hearing, I think, was really informative. It was really helpful to get some of that information out there. We have talked about this in the past, but, logistically, I think it's helpful to reiterate what's going to happen, right, when we start moving forward, having municipal aggregation. So essentially, what this allows us is, options for renewable energy, which is something, obviously, we want to see happen, right? Like, to be able to have more renewable energy is a direction we want to move towards. And this had gotten approved. Part of the process was having the public hearing, which we did last night. And so now this can move forward and move to that next step, which it does need to, let me see, I had written it down here what the next step is that folks can expect. So it does still need to go through a process with the state.
Usually,
Here we go. So DPU needs to approve it. And then from there, all of next year, once that approval happens, Shelley's actually going to work with a number of folks in the community, yourself included, over at QATV, to do a ton of educational, sessions essentially out to folks in the community, so that as this starts to move forward, we all are engaged in the process and we have a direct connection to somebody that we can ask questions to when the bill comes. And just for clarification, because this is something that I wanted to know as well, is when the bill comes, am I going to see a different name on that bill? Am I going to see a different company's name on that bill? Who do I pay? If I have, an automatic payment set up to National Grid, do I need to change that? So, those were some of the things that were answered last night. So just to let folks know, National Grid will still be the name on the bill itself. The supplier will just be different based on whoever that supplier is going to be to give us the best rate for renewable energy. The most important thing that folks should know when they take away from this is that they always have the option of opting out of that, right? So if folks receive their bill, it will come from National Grid, but they see the supplier and they don't want to have the extent of the renewable energy that they have on there as an option, they can say, okay, I'm going to opt down, or I'm just going to opt out completely. And they can have the option of doing that at any time. So again, all of this information will be sent out there in newsletters. Shelley's going to work again with folks like QATV to make sure that they're getting this information out there and that they have easy access to, connecting with them if folks have questions.
I think you're right. I think the opt-out or opt-down option is key. There's also no fee associated with that, as there would be with some other, private energy suppliers. So that really gives you complete flexibility and choice with what you want to do.
Correct. I mean, and again, change, I think at any level is always difficult, right? Because you sort of, again, you set it and forget it, right? And so it certainly is a change, but I want folks to know, that it's a change that gives us options, right? It's a change that essentially gives you a lot of flexibility because you now have the ability to have more competitive pricing with your supplier as well. And again, at the end of the day, it's good for the environment, right? To use more renewable energy. So all around, again, change is always something that is different, right? Because it's change, but at the end of the day, it is for the better because you have more options for competitive pricing. And again, it's good for the environment.
Yeah. How was the public hearing? Was it well attended? Were there any major concerns that came
I
through?
thought that it was really well attended. We had 13 submissions of letters of approval, not approval, letters of support.
Mhm.
And then we also had folks who attended the meeting to give their statements of support as well. We did have some folks who came in and had some questions, which I think were great questions. Again, just logistically, how does this work as far as what your bill looks like moving forward and what the savings look like? And then we had one person who came on who was a little bit concerned about whether or not it would actually translate into savings. But again, that's where, as a supplier changes moving forward, you have the option of opting down should that ever be at a rate that you're not comfortable with.
Yep, absolutely. Very good.
Mhm.
And what's next?
So then we had the public hearing.
Okay.
The tax classification. So the public hearing every year for the tax classification essentially gives us the option of saying, do we want to do a split tax rate or do we want to do an even tax rate across the board? And so the tax classes are split up into 5 different areas, right? It's residential, commercial, industrial, open space, and personal property. And every city and town has the option essentially to say, we're going to tax all 5 of those classes at the same rate. Or we're going to split it, which we have the option of doing, so that the residential is at the lowest it can possibly be for a rate, and the others will be higher. And every year, to my knowledge, we've set that so it's a split rate so that we can keep the residential tax rate as low as it can possibly be. Of course, we have to have a public hearing to make sure that we allow residents the opportunity to let us know what their thoughts are on that. Do we want to do the split rate to have the residential rate as low as possible? Or do we want to have the rate be the same across all 5 of those classes? And so the public hearing, again, for that, I think was well attended. And we had a really informative presentation from the assessor's office to explain that, to just explain sort of where each of those classes are in this last year, where the increases have been in that, and then what the tax rate looks like if we went for the even tax rate or if we did the split tax rate. So, again, every year we generally support the split tax rate so that we can keep the residential rate as low as possible. And then that's where we ended up last night as well, as voting on having that split tax rate.
Okay, very good. And was that unanimous?
It was. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And did the actual rate get set as well?
The rate did get set. So let me just pull up the final number here for you. Feel free to play background music when you're airing this part of it.
See, this is where a little cooking segment would come in handy.
I know, right? Well, so actually, I would love to give some of these other numbers to you.
Okay, sure.
While I'm grabbing the rate, because this is really interesting. So part of the presentation yesterday, again, was just to give some background information about assessed values and the differences, year over year. And one of these, things that I had found really interesting that I think folks would want to know too is that for the calendar year of 2019, sales by price point for single family homes, the majority of them were between $350 and $550. We did have some between $550 and $750 as well, and those were the 2 major chunks. And so again, I thought that was really interesting. Mm-hmm. The medium sale price by neighborhood, Quincy Center was actually the highest. And can you guess at how much?
500,000.
649,000.
I am surprised. Wow.
Yeah. And then can you guess what the next area or neighborhood, I guess, in Quincy was the next highest outside of Quincy Center?
Wollaston?
Squantum.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Wollaston was next, but Squantum was at 584. And then Wollaston was next at 575. So close. Mm-hmm. Close. And then the single family home, the assessed value, the average assessed value of a single family home did go up. And that's where folks, unfortunately, will see the increase in the taxes. I mean, look, bottom line, that's, that was the really frustrating part, I think, about the conversation last night is that the assessed values did go up in the last year, even though the rate went down, which is great. The assessed values did go up and you get taxed on your assessed values. And the assessed values went up from 492,900 on average to 517,300.
Significant.
And that's on average. Yeah, we're looking at over a $25,000 difference there. So, again, on one side of the coin, that's great. If you own a home and your assessed values are going up, that's wonderful, right? Your assets are going up, and that's something that we want to see. But speaking frankly from my perspective anyways, and how I view this too, is that, it does directly translate into a higher tax bill. And that's, from my perspective and from what I've heard from folks last night as well, something that was really concerning for all of us, right? Like to have to go into that with that understanding, and it's tough. So that was, I thought, really good information that came in last night. And then let me see here. So the residential tax rate went down from $12.43 to now $12.14. And then the commercial tax rate went from $24.84 down to $24.24.
Okay.
So again, it's, while it's a difference, negatively, like we went down in the rate, again, the assessed values did on average go up about $25,000.
Right. And that translates into, as you said, an increase. What was the average residential increase?
On average, about $150.
Okay. I know the administration had, set a goal or had hoped to keep taxes level. And I know there were some actions taken to offset that, right?
Significantly. We had a number of orders come in front of us last night presented by the administration to pay that down as much as possible. And they worked diligently. I mean, I think you and I had spoken about this during our last call too, that they had already been working feverishly to try to do everything they can to bring that down as much as possible. And so that's a number of orders were in front of us last night to do so.
Yeah. Were those orders all approved?
They were. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, again, we have to do everything we can, to bring that rate down as low as possible. Which again, I'm really proud of the departments that came forward and the administration and their work in doing what they could to bring that rate down to where it is right now. But this is, it's a year-long process for all of us, right? To make sure that year in and year out, we are keeping that as low as possible. And, this is something that I mentioned last night. We need to also think about what next year looks like. A lot of people talk about how the financial impacts, whether it's, privately, personally, or professionally, and out in the commercial business world, the impact really is going to be felt in 2021, and we need to brace for that. We need to prepare for that. And so while we were able to bring down the rate so much this year, and they were able to, pay that down with some of these, appropriations that were in front of us last night, I think, again, we all are keeping our eye on 2021 and bracing for what's to come next year.
Yeah, I know you've often said that the single most important thing perhaps you do as a city councilor is to deal with the property tax rates. This is the number one thing that you can have a direct impact on residents in the city. So do you feel that this was a good compromise?
Again, I don't think it's so much a compromise as it is that we all are responsible for, what the tax rate looks like when we set the budget, and when we look at what the budget is for the city. And, this was talked about and mentioned yesterday as well, thinking through the city services and making sure that, we're not making any cuts to, our schools, right, which is like the biggest department when it comes to the budget, and making sure we're not making cuts to our first responders, who are there on the front lines every single day if we need to call the police for something, or if there is a fire, God forbid, somewhere. People are still taking advantage of the library services. You had just mentioned earlier when we were checking in with each other that Megan is, able to start doing some more work at the libraries. And so we have to think through, again, what are the city services that we currently have? And, we need to maintain those city services. We can't cut back on those city services, but at the same time, we need to be really, really conservative with the budget year in and year out. And that's something that we do every single year, but more than ever, we need to continue to step that up.
Very good. Anything else last night, Nina?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
If I miss anything, I will definitely let you know next week. We are doing back-to-back meetings this month due to the holidays. And so we'll be checking in again with one another next week. Oh,
great. So I get to see you in a new location next week.
Oh, the pressure is on, Joe. I gotta figure out where to go. Maybe I will be cooking for you next time. We'll see.
All right, stay tuned, folks. We'll see what Nina whips up in the kitchen.
It'll be just me like unpacking takeout food from one of our local restaurants, and putting it on a plate.
That's supporting local businesses, right?
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are you hearing, from the business community in your world, how they're coping right now?
It's really tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough. I don't want to end our call on a bad note, but it is really deeply concerning. they're struggling. A lot of small businesses, I'm sure you know, are closing their doors, and they just can't sustain. It's I think the challenging thing too is that there's no end in sight, right? And we've talked about this before, even in the spring, is that if there was something out there that said, okay, just hang on for 3 more months, hang on for 6 more months, hang on for another year and a half, right? At least you can plan. I like to plan, right? So folks, I think anybody in business knows, right? You want to be able to plan for that kind of thing. And there is no definitive end, right? So how do you plan for the complete unknown of, okay, do I keep my employees furloughed or laid off when I know I'm going to be able to open up my business in a month, right? You don't know that. We don't know. Nobody knows what that looks like right now. And, coming into this cold season when folks can't do outdoor seating, and, we don't know what's going to happen with the increase in numbers, and when does that stop, right? There's so many unknowns out there. And then you also think about all of those families who are trying to help their kids with the at-home learning. We don't know what's going to happen with the schools and when kids can go back. And there's a lot of people who have had to leave their jobs or go part-time because they've now become teachers in their own home, and it's an incredible challenge for families, right? And so there's again, so many unknowns out there, and it is deeply, deeply concerning. We just don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll go back to where we started. One thing we do know is folks at Interfaith Social Services will be there.
They will be. Yeah. Yes. The community, no matter what. You're absolutely right. I think we're really lucky here in Quincy. We work really hard to come together to support one another. And that's one of the things I'm super grateful for.
It's good to talk to you, Nina. We'll catch up next week.
Sounds good. I'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.